Welcome back. We're talking to Emily Coyle of the American Cancer Society and Nicole Ani from the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. Both ladies are here to talk about the impacts of smoking, and thanks so much for being here, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So, Emily, let's start with you. Can you share some statistics with us about smoking and its negative impacts on our health?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to reference my notes to get these numbers right.
Sure.
So we know that from 1965 to about 2012, cigarettes killed more than 20 million Americans, including 2.5 million non-smokers who were exposed to secondhand smoke. So that's the smoke from other people's cigarettes that killed them, and 100,000 babies. Today, about 34 million adults smoke cigarettes, and about 16 million people live with a smoking-related disease. About 60% of those people are living with COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. We know there's about 480,000 deaths per year due to cigarette smoking, and 42,000 of those are from secondhand smoke. Nearly 29% of all cancer deaths are related to smoking. And then there's really a huge economic impact as well. There's about $170 billion of healthcare costs due to smoking for adults, and about $156 billion in lost productivity. So that's, if you have employees taking a break to go smoke, or if you have to stay home to take care of a sick family member due to bronchitis that they contracted because they're more susceptible due to smoking. But really, that's about $300 billion per year in economic impact due to smoking.
So those are shocking, both to our health and to finances. Nicole, do we find that people in rural areas tend to use tobacco more than people in urban areas?
Yeah, so tobacco use does tend to vary depending on the population, education levels, your income, and also where you're located. So we do tend to see higher rates of tobacco use in rural areas, and pretty consistently Montana does have higher tobacco use than the national average. And more specifically to a certain type of tobacco product, our smokeless tobacco use rates are always much higher than the national average, and it's actually more than double what the national average is.
Wow.
It's 3.4% for Montana adults who use smokeless tobacco, and that's that's the national stat, and Montana adults who use tobacco is 8, so it's more than double.
Okay, so let's keep talking about stats a little bit here, and those numbers are very high, but it seems like less people are smoking these days. Is that true or not true?
It is. So we have seen a decline between 2005 to 2016. We saw about a 5% decline. So from about 21% to just under 16% of adults were smoking over that period of time. And then that reached a historic low of 14% in 2017. So that's okay. A total 67% decline since 1965. So that's terrific. However, among youth, while we are seeing smoking among high school students plummet from about 16% in 2011 to 7.6% in 2016, that's ticked up to about 8.1%, and that also coincides with the increase in e-cigarette use, and that usage has increased about 78% among high school students. But the real numbers here from 65 to 2012, those lower smoking rates have been propelled by all these collective tobacco control efforts that public health has engaged in, health advocacy organizations, state and local policies to promote smoke-free air ordinances, and combined those efforts have saved about 8 million lives from tobacco. Now the average life expectancy has increased overall among people by about 10 years. About a third of those years, so about 3 years, are due to reduced smoking rates.
Awesome. Well, that is good news. So Nicole, maybe I'll come back to you. Is there a difference between traditional tobacco compared to commercial tobacco? What are the differences there?
Yes, there's definitely a difference, and especially for American Indians. Many American Indian tribal nations, they actually use traditional tobacco for ceremony, prayer, healing. It's sacred to them. And then we have commercial cigarettes, which are really intended for profit, and they're mostly used habitually and recreationally. And unfortunately, the tobacco industry has been exploiting Native American images and symbols to try to make their products seem less harmful and addict more users. So when we're working with tobacco prevention in Montana, it's really important to recognize the difference between the use of traditional tobacco and commercial tobacco.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about smoking, we've talked about e-cigarettes, and we touched a little bit on chewing tobacco, but can we talk about that a little bit more and how it can cause cancer? Maybe Emily,
Yeah, absolutely. So chewing tobacco, there's about 30 different chemicals, many of which we know cause cancer in chewing tobacco. It can cause cancer in your mouth, in your throat, in your tongue. It can lead to pancreatic cancer. Chewing tobacco is also highly addictive, contains nicotine, and it is a very dangerous drug as well, just like combustible tobacco.
Okay, and you did touch on e-cigarettes a little bit too, but can you talk about some of the dangers that might be there?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know fully what all the dangers are with e-cigarettes because they're relatively new, but I do know that they can lead to some health issues as well, particularly because they have drugs in them. We don't know entirely what's in the juices. We don't know the long-term effects of these drugs, and that's something that I think the health department is looking into as well.
Right, just to add on to what Emily said about that is that we don't know the long-term health effects, but we do know that e-cigarettes are definitely not safe for youth, young adults, and pregnant women because they tend to contain nicotine, and nicotine is harmful for brain development. Sure. So that's something that we're concerned about. And then the U.S. Surgeon General has also found that e-cigarettes can contain heavy metals, they contain ultrafine particles that have been known to lead to cancer and respiratory disease. So it's something that we're very cautious about and just watching the data overall to make sure or to follow the health effects of these products.
Okay, great. All right, ladies, we need to pause for a quick break here, but coming up next, we're going to learn about how smoking cessation resources are out there and available. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.